We spend more than a decade in school learning about history and algebra, but how much time do we actually spend learning about ourselves? Jay Shetty points out this huge gap between our formal education and the real-world skills we need to navigate our lives, our minds, and of course, our relationships.
No, seriously, think about it for a second. What's your number? I'm going to guess that for most of us, it's pretty low. We learn all about historical dates and complex formulas, but not so much about how to handle anxiety or build a healthy relationship.
And that's really the core idea here. While some of those school subjects just fade away, there are these fundamental life lessons that, if we had learned them earlier, could have totally changed our path.
So what we're going to do is break down 7 of those absolute game changers. We've grouped them into 3 main areas to make them really easy to digest, and more importantly, to actually start applying in your own life.
Okay, so our first core area is all about mastering your inner world. Because really, before you can handle the outside world, you've got to understand the one that's going on inside you.
All right, so lesson number 1 feels like a bit of a paradox, right? We're taught to think the loudest person in the room has all the power. But true confidence often comes from quiet observation. When you speak less, you end up listening more. And when you finally do speak, your words just carry so much more weight.
And you see this principle play out everywhere. Complain less, and when you do, people take your problems way more seriously. Argue less, and you hold on to your dignity. Chase less, and you actually become more magnetic. It's all about intention over volume.
This little story it nails it, doesn't it? Most of us don't really listen. We're just kind of waiting for our turn to talk. But if we truly, genuinely listened, our responses would be so much more meaningful. Wisdom isn't found in speaking, it's found in understanding.
And you know that wisdom you get from listening? It also teaches you what isn't working. And that brings us to our second lesson for mastering your inner world. It's a really stark choice. When you cling to a person or a job or a feeling that's holding you back, you aren't stopping change. You're just making sure you get painfully dragged along by it.
I mean, just look at this contrast. It says it all. Holding on can feel like love or commitment, but so often it just ends up sinking us, trapping us in the past. Letting go, as hard as it is what actually frees you. It strengthens you and lets you grow.
So once you start getting a handle on that inner world, speaking with intention, letting go of what holds you back, you're just so much better equipped to handle the world outside. Which brings us to our second area, decoding your relationships. This is all about understanding the dynamics with the people in our lives.
Okay, this is a trap that so many of us fall into. We have an issue with our partner, right? So we spend like 80% of our energy complaining about them to our friends, and maybe only 20%, if we're lucky, actually talking to them. This pattern has a name. It's called emotional triangulation, and it doesn't solve anything. It just makes the problems bigger.
Here's a tough but absolutely essential lesson. Look, anyone can be kind and charming when everything's going their way. But a person's true character, that shows up when they're under pressure, when things go wrong, when they're inconvenienced.
And I just love this analogy from Wayne Dyer. It's perfect. Stress doesn't create new flaws. It just squeezes out what was already inside. It reveals their patience or their kindness or their temper. You have to pay attention to what comes out when life applies a little bit of pressure.
And for our final lesson on relationships, let's pull out the excuse translator. Here's the deal. People make time and effort for what they value. These common lines, they're not really about their capabilities, they're about their priorities. At the end of the day, actions are the only language you can really, truly trust.
So when you start decoding the patterns in your relationships, understanding these communication traps and the real meaning behind excuses, you naturally get to this really critical question. What am I willing to accept? And that brings us to our final section, defining your true worth.
This is one of the hardest truths to swallow. You can feel like you deserve respect, love, or a promotion, but the world doesn't give you what you deserve. It gives you what your actions show you're willing to accept. Your life is basically a reflection of the standards you enforce.
And not enforcing those standards? Oh, it has a real cost. Research from the American Psychological Association found that letting those small boundary violations slide over and over again makes you 62% more likely to end up in an emotionally draining relationship. Those little things, they add up, big time.
So what even is a boundary, really? Because I think a lot of people get this wrong. It's not about controlling someone else's behavior. It's a promise you make to yourself about how you will act. It's the shift from saying, you can't yell at me, to deciding, if you yell at me, I will leave the room. The power is all in your response.
Now here's a painful side effect of growth. As you get stronger and you start setting boundaries, some people, well, they're not going to like it. They might say they miss the old you, but what they often miss is the version of you that was way easier for them to control.
Your growth can be disruptive. I mean, when you stop being a people pleaser, you literally disrupt the systems that were benefiting from you having no boundaries. And it's so important not to shrink yourself down just to fit back into spaces you've clearly outgrown.
So we've gone through these 7 lessons, and now we're at the most important part. What's next? Because the real learning doesn't happen from watching something like this. It happens from actually doing it.
When you really look back at everything we just talked about, the one thread connecting all of these lessons is this single powerful shift. It's all about moving from passively hoping for a better life to actively choosing it. Choosing how you speak, who you engage with, and what standards you're going to accept.
And that brings us to the final and definitely the most important question. You have the insights now. You can see the patterns. The only thing left to do is to choose one, just one, and start putting it into practice. Today. So, which one is it going to be?